Welcome back. I'm glad to see you made it all the way to part 3. Today we're gonna look at what some might consider to be the more boring part of this entire story. And that's how this relates to criminal law. And I know most people aren't that interested in the actual details, so I try to summarize it a bit and go through the more general lines to give you a better picture of the entire thing. Enjoy! Basically, modern criminal law definitely assumes that we do have free will and responsibility for our actions. A lot of different articles literally state that something has to be your fault. And on the flip side, there are certain exceptions when someone is in a certain mindset that we no longer hold them accountable for their actions, which by extension, and the fact that our prisons aren't empty, means that we usually do hold someone accountable for their actions. At the same time, and a bit paradoxically, criminal law also very much trusts causality and the absolute application of causality. Because there has to be a causal connection between the actions of a person and the consequences those have. Like, if someone dies, it has to be because if I murder someone, that's only the case if there's a causal connection between my actions and that person's death. This is paradoxical because we just realized a few minutes earlier that an absolute application of causality is not it's impossible to combine with the sense of responsibility and free will. So that's problematic. So what about law and morality? Although free will and morality are a little bit connected, it's definitely possible, I think, to have one without the other. There are basically two schools of thought when it comes to this in law. The first one, I'm not completely sure how to translate to English. It's called rechtspositivisme, which I guess literally translates to positive law, which is ironic considering what it actually means. In positive law, which is what I'm just going to call it from now on, morality is seen completely separate from law. The content of laws, of course, are a product of the current accepted morals. But if a certain judgment is considered morally responsible, it's completely irrelevant as long as that judgment from the judge fits with the official laws. Basically, if I steal a piece of bread to save my starving sister, then that might be very much morally responsible. But according to positive law, I would still be judged guilty of theft and I would still be sentenced to jail. In positive law, the judge is basically seen as a computer who just applies the said laws without actually thinking about whether it's just or not. You might think now, you might see now why I think calling it positive law is a little ironic, because that doesn't sound very positive. Almost directly opposed to this positive law, we have nature's law or natural law. And this is based on the idea that there is absolute good and evil, independent of human intervention. And in this philosophy, or this law movement, I guess, the actual laws are supposed to just be translations of this natural law. And the judge is supposed to judge if things are actually just, and not just if they adhere to the existing law. Needless to say, this is heavily based on religions, and specifically the religion of the country where the laws arise. So in Europe, that's mostly Judaism and Christianity. There is, of course, a problem with this, and the fact that what is objectively good and just differs from place to place. But in modern criminal law, we use a combination of both of these. We try to, the judge has to stay relatively objective and neutral, but at the same time things can't be too unjust. So we have a lot of laws that basically say in very difficult language, is it reasonable what we're doing here? And if it's not, we can overrule existing laws. When it comes to responsibility and free will, I don't think my personal vision is compatible with modern criminal law. Mostly because of the paradox between, on the one hand, accepting free will and responsibility, and on the other hand also accepting the absolute causality, which, as I said earlier, is a paradox. I do, however, understand why it is the way it is, because we can't just give up, say, alright, we can't hold people responsible for their actions, so let's just not punish them. Because, yeah, that's not a particularly good idea. On the flip side, that very debate and the fact that we work the way we work, the way we have criminal law, the way we have it, was inevitable according to determinism. And even if we make any changes to it, that's also inevitable. Like, debating about the implications of determinism is almost like a feedback loop. You don't really get anywhere. So I don't think, like, that's one of those things where if you think about it long enough you might go crazy. So let's not do that. Let's keep our sanity for now. Now, when we get to morality, it's a bit more interesting. I'm a nihilist, which might make you think that I'd adhere more to positive law. Because I'm like, yeah, we can't base laws on absolute values, so we have to make up our own and adhere to those. But paradoxically, I think I dislike that even more, because in a way that implies that, like, we try to make up absolute laws that count for everyone, which is even more incompatible with nihilism. As well as criminal law is supposed to serve the people it protects. And if we make a law that's, like, in our eyes completely unjust, then it just increases the distance between the people and the system of law. You can already see that when people in, for example, my country feel like people aren't being punished harshly enough. And because of that, people are trying to do it themselves, which is, of course, the last thing we want. The entire goal of law systems is that so people don't try to punish others instead of the judge. So I do think a balance between natural law and even though natural law isn't true, I do think the concept of it is very useful. Like try and stay reasonable and look at it from case to case instead of adhering to a very strict law. But we also have to combine it with positive law, because otherwise, yeah, every different case would have a different result because the judge feels differently, obviously. This last part was a lot longer. In fact, the entire video was a lot longer than I intended. I thought I was going to hit this out of the park in like 15-20 minutes at most, but I kind of forgot that you don't speak at the same speed as you read, and this is 3,500 words, so it was a lot longer than I thought. I am definitely, probably gonna cut this in multiple pieces. I also don't think this is gonna get a lot of views because it's a lot more dry cut and less entertaining than the other videos. But I did think it was a very interesting subject to talk about, and I am very curious about your views. Like, how do you look at this? Do you have a personal philosophy that doesn't fit with mine? Like, what are your criticisms? What do you think? Anyway, have a nice day. I am actually going to sleep now because I am very tired. Bye bye.